Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this very exciting panel discussion. And thank you, panelists. I'll take a moment to introduce all the panelists to all of you. Let me start with Tanvi on the leftmost side. Tanvi is the senior digital precision marketing lead at NIVEA. She's almost has a decade of experience in media and digital industry. She's actually managed brands like L'Oreal and NIVEA, and she's an expert and passionate about crafting consumer journeys and innovating in this digital world. She's also loves to trek, and she loves to travel and explore new places. Then next to her is Vishwanath Shetty. He heads the business at Pocket Aces. He's also had a CMO role at D2C and Skinsy, where they really brought digital media in line for the laser treatment for skin. He's a passionate content marketer. He believes in creating engaging communities for brands, and that's what he's doing right now at Pocket Aces. He's passionate about music and watching content and learning how brands are built using content and communities. Then we have Samyukta Iyer. She's an acclaimed marketer with about 15 years of work ex. She's built brands like Kaya, Baskin Robbins, and she is a current head of marketing at Kaya. She operates in an omni-channel world and has used digital successfully to build these brands. Other brands on her portfolio are Vaseline, Lakme, Fruity, Digene, and Asian Paints. She's one of those marketeers who's won the title of Young Lions at Cannes for 3 years in a row. Welcome, Samyukta. And now we have Akshay. He leads marketing at Candere, which is now part of Kalyan Jewelers. He's also led an omni-channel journey, being a digital-first brand, now expanding into offline world as well. He heads marketing and brand experience at Candere.com, and he's passionate about solving startup problems. He believes that in his free time, he offers Sunday breakfast dates where he solves these problems for startups and works with operators. Welcome, all of you, Tanvi, Vishwanath, Samyukta, as well as Akshay. So, it's as an audience, one of the key things that is probably on top of mind for most of the people sitting here is, how do you, as a brand, how do you really map the consumer journeys in this omni-channel D2C world? There is an aspect of marketing to these users in this digital world, and there is a channel of method of mapping the consumer journeys. So maybe, we start with, a little bit of that from you, Tanvi, on how you see that has phased out for a large brand like NIVEA, which had a very strong offline presence.
Yeah.
So over to you from here.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think step one was for us to really acknowledge the fact that today consumer journeys are not linear. So we know that consumers are exposed to so many different touch points today, especially in a category like skincare. She's on a constant discovery, exploration kind of a journey. So I think the first step for us when we talked about customer journeys was to really acknowledge that fact and say then therefore, what are these different ways in which I can reach my consumer. The second thing was actually understanding the consumer and therefore, just making sense of who she is, because we knew we weren't, just talking to someone who is 18 to 20 to, someone who's just, displaying a certain specific life stage, but within that she's doing so many different things. She comes in with different, she's at different stages in her skincare journey. So speaking, again, specifically to the category that we play in, it was very important for us to even understand what is her category entry point when she gets into skincare. Someone's getting into it, at the age of 18, by the time she's 22, she's already super evolved in her journey. Someone's getting introduced to it only at the age of 25, maybe when she's a little bit into her career. So for us, just understanding all these little nuances around, how the consumer comes into the category and how kind of she plays around with it in different ways. That was sort of the starting point, and that's always been kind of the anchor around which we, kind of build a lot of what we do at NIVEA. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing which is probably coming out stronger is how over a long-term period, there are a lot of micro moments that you're probably capturing in how these consumers are entering the purchase journey or just the brand interaction journey. It would be very interesting to see how, and maybe Akshay, you could take this, to really, as a brand, to thrive in an environment where consumers are doing this omni-channel touch point. How do the teams, marketing teams really thrive using agile methodologies, both on, preparing the back end, getting right touch points in place? How do you make that happen at the back end? Because one is knowing the consumer, but then how do you capture that touch points at, in a digital first world? And with examples of, what you've seen at Candere really work for you.
Sure. I'll break this answer into two parts. Part A is like how do we look at consumer journey, right? So in our case, like since we have a online store and also a retail store, right? So we look at it in four parts. Like part A is like a user has discovered the product online and purchased offline. Part B is consumer has discovered the product online, purchase is also happening online. Second, part three, third and fourth is user has discovered the product offline and purchased offline, and the user has discovered the product offline and made the purchase online. So these are the four different type of consumer journeys that we look at, and hence like our entire marketing spends, the teams, the way we operate, right? It shifted. We started our offline retail journey in 2022, right? Prior to that, it was completely online. So we did not have to look after, like we only had one journey. Now that the same journey has split into four halves. What we do is like we have something created called as our entire data warehouse, okay? And we have something called as CDP, like I think many brands does. The main problem in the digital space is that it's not about collecting the data. It's about how accurately your data you're collecting and what are the data losses that are happening. So because we have multiple systems, right? We have CRM, we have a communication platform, we have personalization tool, we have recommendation tool, and then so many data points that we need to collect, we need to process, and then we need to look at different data, and based on that, how do we actually split the entire marketing spends? So looking the journey into 4 halves, I think that has helped us make informed decision on which channel we need to invest more. Though I think we can see that like our data point is like 70% of the consumers are discovering the product online. So though our CPA on the retail side would be lower, but I think our investments should be on the higher side on the digital space.
This is very, very interesting. And maybe this is the segue I think I can use to bring Samyukta in this discussion. And thanks for your inputs, both, Tanvi and Akshay. Samyukta, you have really seen this shift for Kaya and Baskin-Robbins, right? I mean, Baskin-Robbins was probably losing its relevance in the young TG, and Kaya has a very strong offline channel network. How are these, it would be good for the audience and all of us to really learn from your experience on how did you help these brands find out that value proposition to the right consumer set mapping, and how did you really use digital media to drive this omni-channel existence for the brand? It would be good to hear from you on your experience from this.
Thanks for the question, Jyoti. So I think one big thing I think we were discussing just before the panel right now in terms of saying that today every brand, small, big, otherwise, needs to have a very strong presence both online and offline. So it's no longer about whether I'm a D2C brand, whether I'm an offline brand. Everyone's omni-channel today. Brands that were born on D2C have now started opening up, like you also mentioned, opening up stores offline in order to give consumers the experience that they've been craving because they don't get that online. And vice versa, the convenience, the comfort of calling for things online is why even the large brands who resisted it for the longest time today are all there. A great case study would be what happened with, say, BR in, when we actually did one of the first collabs that, we drove with Swiggy, where we actually did a 50-50 partnership in terms of making the ads, making the media, all of the media buys, including Hotstar integration. And for the very first time, two brands, one aggregator brand and one brand actually came together. And it hit the nail on many boxes because one, a brand like Baskin-Robbins, which had been there in the Indian market for 26 years at that point in time, globally for 75 years, suddenly became relevant to millennials who had kind of played back to us saying It's my childhood brand. It's a brand that I grew up having as a kid with my parents. After dinner, we would go for a walk, go to the nearest Baskin-Robbins parlor and pick from the 31 flavors. But today it was not the brand of choice for millennials. So there was a definite issue there. For Swiggy, they wanted a premium ice cream brand on their platform. So it kind of hit the nail on many boxes there. Second, it had also become irrelevant to the male audiences. Perhaps because of the color pink, it had become a little, alienating the audience. And ice creams as a category is fairly gender agnostic otherwise. Third, there was also a problem of brand not being easily available because ice creams was not, as a category, was not something that people were calling for online. So going live on IPL, being there from the first match to the last match, we did this fantastic innovation with Hotstar as well, where you could just call for the ice cream while the gamification was happening. And it just changed the landscape because suddenly the brand became relevant. The brand had fresh fruit ice cream flavors like a Naturals and an Ibaco. And it also helped everybody. And like I was saying, it was a much larger connect because suddenly during the lockdown, the brand was available and that would have never happened. I mean, we could have never foresaw that had the brand only been. So I think why D2C matters, it kind of answers the question of the topic today is the brand is then available. Any brand of your choice is then available at your fingertips.
Thank you, Samyukta. This case study is definitely going to be one for the books, how it really revolutionized and brought BR back into relevance for this TG. And maybe, we changing gears a bit here. We've kind of spoken about how understanding consumers is relevant, how to have agile teams at the backup, as at the back end is very important to really have a successful D2C channel. Let's change gears and go a bit into influencer marketing. I mean, hottest topic for D2C brands. Communities are growing rapidly. And maybe Vishwanath, we bring in here to just understand what is your learning been starting from, TOI, running this at Tootsie and Skinsy, coming back, doing it at Pocket Aces. What is the mantra for getting content right on social marketing, and how do you advise brands to leverage content and social marketing, social media influencer marketing for building brands and having that direct connect?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. See, I feel knowing your customer is very, very important, right? And the customer, where is he? Is he on Insta, or is he on Facebook, or is he on LinkedIn? That's also really, really important. So content is a huge bucket where you can bifurcate it basis where your audience is. But interestingly, from when the influencer, wave started post-COVID, I think there was good traction initially. I remember basically when we started Skinsy, which was direct competition to Kaya then, and we largely were D2C. So we provided clinical services at home, right? So for us, I still remember we did Drop Challenge, which was one of the first campaign that I did for Skinsy back then, and it was, I think, Women's Day, if I'm not wrong. So there was a clear trend that we saw globally. Whatever works on TikTok or on Insta, in a week's time it used to travel to India, right? So you always want to make your UGC content a success, right? And everyone starts digging ki kya kare. While it was very, very simple for, I think, what we saw, and we executed in 10 days, and we spent like barely around 10-12 lakhs. Interestingly, we didn't get a lot of leads in such, but the consideration and the conversion doubled our business. So I think influencer marketing is not just a tick mark in a box, but you need to be very, very sure what will work for your brand and how your audience will take it. And if you make it a very, inclusive community campaign, budget doesn't matter. It will work for your brand. So that's influencer marketing, and working, and you don't have to spend crores, but you can still leverage it using international trends or global trends, Indianize it, take one or two good influencers and make a UGC content, and do a tactical campaign and kick off. So that's how influencer marketing has like really helped, especially for a skincare category. So I think that's a great example. But now what has happened is a lot of these influencers also don't want to be called influencers. They want to be called as creators. So, and if you go back to the influencers, tell them, you know what, here is a reel, here's a post, do one story, one reel, they'll charge you a bomb. But instead, if an Instagram influencer want to do a podcast series on Spotify, and as a brand you help him to do that, he will come at one third the cost, right? And he will do value adds like no one's business. So you have to help creator. We have stopped calling influencer. So when you start connecting with the creator, help him in his journey, is when the brand grows, and the creator will be happy to, you know, push extra stuff from his side.
Yeah,
or
this
her
is very
side.
interesting how I would say the relationship is now becoming more win-win rather than just a transactional relationship. I think that's a critical element of, I think, how we all want to build trust relationships with our consumers. So I think this content marketing as a just as a topic is very relevant for all the brands that are represented here. So I would really like, Tanvi, if you could also contribute a little bit to helping us understand how in L'Oreal or as well as in NIVEA, you've kind of gone about building content strategies, whether on e-commerce marketplaces or on social media. How do you link the multiple facets of content and social media influence, creator economy? So would love to hear your two cents there.
Yeah, I think as a brand, NIVEA stands for very specific values that I would say in some ways sets it apart from some of the competitors, where, you know, one is the care aspect within skincare. So we're very heavily, you know, as a brand, we kind of live and breathe that ethos of care. There is also more focus on, you know, healthy looking skin versus just beautiful skin. So there's, it kind of, you know, has certain very strong, you know, values that it kind of, you know, lives by. And where that kind of therefore, you know, flows into our, you know, content strategy is just around authenticity. So today, for example, it's very important for us to not just, you know, go out there and, you know, sort of just make claims to consumers that don't sound authentic or don't sound believable. It's important for us to be as real to the consumer as we can, because that's just what she's also looking for. I don't think you can today go to a consumer and say something that sounds inauthentic or, you know, no one's buying it, right? And I think when it comes to, you know, content creators, influencers, I mean, that entire space has kind of, we all know, you know, how much it has boomed to the extent that, you know, you even have de-influencing today. I mean, it's already, you know, gone to that end of the spectrum. But it's, I think we really picked up on this insight around, you know, influencers and how, you know, the kind of hold that they have on RTG. So to take an example of one of our brands, and it's been one of our, you know, most successful, you know, IMC you know, the campaigns that we've run on NIVEA Soft, one of our, you know, flagship products, where we ran what we call NIVEA Soft Fresh Batch. It's a yearly edition. I think we did just concluded our third edition this year, where, you know, we invite young college girls. So we invite them to create content to, you know, show their influencer side to the, you know, to the audiences. And then, you know, the best entries get picked out. It runs at a massive scale. I think we were able to, you know, run entries into the millions just to kind of, you know, get people to create content for the brand. And out of that, we choose around 60 to 70 winners and conclude that with a grand event. And what happens is, it's this cohort of girls then that we are building each year with, you know, through our constant engagement, where we are then therefore able to, you know, bring them on as brand advocates, as, you know, as long-term brand, you know, people, right? So the entire genesis of this also comes from the fact that, you know, content today is in the hand of the consumer as well. It's no longer just brand speaking to consumer, it's a lot about a conversation. And that's why something like NIVEA Soft Fresh Batch helped us kind of build that conversation with the consumer, bring them on as brand advocates, and then kind of really hone that entire piece. So
I think using consumers as brand voice ambassadors is a thing that's becoming fairly powerful as part of our, I think, marketing toolkit. And would love to know what you have seen, Samyukta, especially in Kaya or any of your other past experiences. How have, let's say, the content strategy really evolved? And not just influencers, would love to know if there are, content that you create for digital media consumers, not necessarily for paid version, but things that help you really have a voice digitally on behalf of Kaya.
So yeah, I'd borrow from everything that has been said, and we have two skincare experts as well on the panel. It's quite skincare heavy. So I'm just going to borrow an analogy with what happened at Kaya. So we'd been in the Indian market for almost 17 years. And one thing that had happened was that our clients, our customers had kind of grown up with the brand. So loyalty for the brand is extremely high. People love the brand and they stay put. There is no drop or leaks, etc. that kind of happens in a journey like this. However, there was that persistent issue of saying we're not getting new people into the brand. And when we started digging a little deeper, we realized that the issue was not merely about driving footfalls or driving conversions, but it went little deeper into a subject that unfortunately gets forgotten in this whole diaspora of digital marketing and everything that happens. I think everyone's kind of forgotten the whole tenet of brand building in that entire journey. So that's kind of where we started. We went back and we said, okay, if we need to speak to the Gen Z who's very different from the millennial, and the people who are coming to us are probably older millennials today. How do we kind of start making sense even to that Gen Z audience? Like you spoke about authenticity. That's really the voice of Gen Z, you spoke about de-influencing and, how we are working with influencers today. We kind of had to go back to the books and say, can we understand this audience? And that's when we realized that our clinics have always been extremely inclusive. So we've always had like men coming into the clinic. We've always had people from the transgender community coming into the clinic, but none of those narratives were ever kind of put out there for anyone to know. It's almost like having a Mona Lisa at home and nobody knows that you have painted something like that. So I was like, okay, we've actually struck gold. Let's start from there. So that's where we kind of branded, repositioned, but this time with purpose at the heart of everything that we did. So if I were to say, Jyoti, you are beautiful, it's a tad condescending as a statement, as opposed to me saying, beautiful is you. So that means you embody the word beautiful and everything that it stands for. You're defining. Another interesting insight was that nobody wanted to speak about the same customer who's, will proudly flaunt their Gucci, Prada, Burberry, will not tell anybody that I went to an aesthetic dermatology clinic and actually got a Botox or a filler done, which posed another big issue about referrals, word of mouth. How do you get new customers if your existing customers don't want to tell people about it as well? So we realized that as the largest brand in the category, or the number one brand in the category that actually introduced aesthetic dermatology to India, it kind of became our responsibility to normalize these conversations as well. And that's where the birth of Beautiful Is You happened. We consistently started doing a lot of brand building. So like you said, it was 360 degree. We did a lot of, linguistic initiatives. We did a lot of, multi-city, multi-brand initiatives. Hyper-local, used digital to the fullest in terms of, targeting different personas and cohorts, in terms of getting that. Another big thing was letting go of followers on Instagram so that we start getting not the contest junkies, but actually getting the real people who are actually interested. Like, I think you were talking about obsessively people are reading today. The back of pack has moved to the front of pack. So people understand the difference between a 0.5% salicylic versus a 2% salicylic. It's not the customer of 10 years back who didn't know all of that. And another thing that we did is even the kind of influencers we worked with actually became people who were inclusive in their real lives and not people who were just willing to work with, any brand, so to speak. So it was a tough call in terms of we had to let go, clean up a lot before we kind of, then started building on that. The beauty of this was after a few months, we actually then looked at, of course, all your brand matrices looked beautiful, the brand, healthy, it looked extremely good. But the minute my reach, impressions, clicks went up, we actually saw leads, appointments, footfalls actually start. So we actually saw that there was a clear correlation between the brand building funnel and the performance marketing funnel. So my only thought that I want to leave everybody is with don't stop doing brand building because there's no substitute for that.
No, as I said, I think these case studies are stuff that goes into books, right? I mean, students of marketing would love to know how these things really play out. And I think while on the face of it, the results on sales looks very good and the hard work then starts making sense, it would be good to now get into the nuts and bolts. And Akshay, I'm coming back to you for the nuts and bolts on measurement. Give us a flavor on how D2C brands really measure these things, whether it's digital touch points, whether it's media spends, what all does really go into that? How do you do ROAS measurements, return on investments? How do you really bring all that into, again, ways of working, and how do you set this engine in place? Because you do need, the working model at the back to really support what all, we change at the value proposition, understanding consumers, bringing social media influencers. So would love to know your thoughts on what kind of performance metrics and how do you set this engine in motion to measure right across the funnel?
Certainly. So I think over the period of time, I think we have used different matrices for measurement at different stage of our journey. Like we were startup first, then we were into growth stage. But I think one theory, which we kind of built it, I would like to explain it to everyone. Imagine this quadrant, right? Like we have high CPA, low CPA on one axis, and then we have high growth and low growth on the other axis. And then we had made an analogy of using animals and their traits. No offense to anyone. It's like just just for a reference of explaining this theory. So you will either, like every brand, every D2C brand will fit into either of these four quadrant. Imagine like high CPA and high growth, right? Let's call this quadrant cheetah, wherein you want to get growth, faster growth, regardless of whatever CPA you are actually ready to pay. Second quadrant is low growth and low CPA. Let's call this quadrant as a tortoise, wherein you are moving in slowly, and the CPA is also slow and the growth is also slow. Third quadrant, wherein we don't want to fall in, is high CPA, low growth. Let's call this quadrant donkey, because like no one want to be there in this quadrant. And the third quadrant, when everyone wants to be there, is low CPA and high growth. Let's call this quadrant shark. So at every point of time, right, every D2C startup will be either of this one quadrant. You just have to see like how are you moving across in this quadrant. And accordingly, you have to take a call. Like, is it fits in with the entire business objective to be in this quadrant? Else, what it takes for you to move to the desired quadrant based on your business objective. Apart from this, there are multiple metrics, right? Like conversion rate, ROAS, CPA, and you can turn it around. Like there are a lot of metrics.
Yeah, I think you've done the right job of making it so fun that nobody else wants to know about CTR, ROAS, all of that can just lie at the back end, because all of us will take away donkey, shark, cheetah, and what was the last element? Tortoise with us. But yeah, fantastic way. I think while a lot goes into really building a D2C brand, what I also want to kind of touch upon, and maybe Tanvi, from your experience with what you've seen at NIVEA really happen, sometimes not all D2C channels will play out equally, right? So maybe give us a sense of how at NIVEA you're using, let's say, the D2C shopfront to really do other aspects of consumer reach outs better and just building the overall health of the business.
Yeah. So I'll speak as someone who works at a mass market brand. This may not be the experience of businesses where D2C is at the core of what they do, but specifically for us, I think we always approach D2C with the mindset that it's just a way for us to get a step closer to the consumer, right? So how could we leverage all the tools that D2C has to offer, whether it was to, gather insights about the consumer, understand her behavior when she's interacting with the brand directly, gathering data, how can I reach her better, be more personalized. So for us, I think the single-minded focus when we looked at D2C right from day one was not so much about it being, a highly profitable channel which is going to bring us, tons and tons of business, but it was also with a very clear focus that we know that this channel is going to give us that kind of peep into what the consumer really is all about. And I think that's just the way we sort of approached D2C. I think we launched about 3 years back, and until today we're able to kind of be very agile. We were able to A/B test a lot in terms of how we develop landing pages, whether it's understanding what are the smaller nuances that need to be fixed in the journey of the consumer, the flow. How can we've started including influencer content within the page experience itself, so we're bringing that content also there to make it a lot more a lot more relevant to her. So yeah, I think for us it's always been about another way to kind of just be closer and speak more, again, authentically to our consumers. Yeah.
That's a good note to segue towards probably the last section of the conversation. Maybe one by one, all of us kind of compile our experience, synthesize into what you would like the audience to take home, a key message. And maybe Vishwanath, we start with you, and we'll roll the mic across the panel.
So yeah, I think everyone looks at growth, lowering, X many cost, blah, blah, blah. But one metric everyone, I think so we are in such a hurry of growing that sometimes we miss on, customer service, right? People who are yelling out there talking about what are the things that you can do right to improve your service. And, Tootsie, Skinsy both were largely a service brand. And I'm sure everyone here will relate to it. So at a given point in time, we were doing really well, but we were not growing. So everyone was figuring out what is going wrong, and we figured no one basically is solving the problem in terms of service or slots or whatever that is, right? And the moment we start, looking at the data very closely is when we figured we are getting 100 customers and we're losing 100 customers, right? So, and we were stagnant. We were growing, but we were not retaining our existing customers, right? So that is where I think a lot of marketer or founders in the chase of growth have stopped looking and, listening or solving problems ASAP rather than waiting for, 10 days, 15 days, let's see what happens, and then the refund goes back. And that, I think that is one thing all marketers should closely look at, is what I have learned in my 2.5 years of a marketing head journey. And I think that's a clear takeaway that I would say being a marketer you should clearly focus on.
Yeah, so even in this fragmented world of digital, the real source of truth is the consumer experience on what they feel as a service element on.
Yeah, and they are vocal, right? You being closer to a consumer, he's even more closer to you, is what I feel. The moment anything goes wrong, he'll come to your handle, he'll start shouting and screaming. And then with him, and Khuda na khasta, if he's an influencer, then you're gone. So that is what, you have to be very, so you have to be very, very careful of who are you servicing, what service are you giving. So eventually we started asking, are you an influencer sorts? And we used to give extra service to them. So that is what you have to be very, very, and the service industry is very tricky, right? It's not like your regular FMCG where you put out a solid product, you build a legacy brand, and then you start engaging with, your audience, and the product will take care of it. Service industry is totally different. I think it's a difficult industry to market, to sustain. It's a very difficult industry. Yeah.
Tough as being a cheetah in the service industry. Sorry, shark. So let's come to you, Akshay. What's the message you would like the audience to take home?
I would like to continue what Vishwanath said. I think it's easier to optimize other metrics, like you can optimize your CTR, you optimize your CPA, ROAS, etc. But how do you measure and control your CSAT and retention rate? I think that's because I think everyone speaks that D2C is crowded. There is a lot of competition day in and day out. But I think getting the right CSAT and right retention, it looks very simple. Like I was speaking, but I think it's very difficult metric to get on.
Got it. Maybe we change the gears and check with Samyukta if you have a message from top of the funnel to give and help the audience take away some key messages.
Yeah. So I'll go back to exactly what I said because I'm a very strong believer in the process of brand building, and I think everyone here has spoken about patience. That is, I think, an acquired virtue that is kind of missing right now, and it's happening across the globe, it's happening across industries everywhere. Brand building takes time. Brand building is a journey, and brand building needs consistency. Brand building is the only thing, and I'm putting my neck out on the line and saying this, but it's literally the only thing that's going to differentiate even in the so-called overly crowded, competitive, space of D2C. Because at the end of the day, I think what everyone's kind of forgotten is that digital also is a medium, just like everything else, like TV, like radio, like outdoor. It's another channel, it's another medium. Of course, today with the advent of AI and conversational and generative, there's just so much happening there. But nonetheless, I think the more intelligent we are in terms of, acknowledging that this is an enabler and it's not the end game, I think that's where the entire meat lies. So it's quite simple if we also started kind of going back to the very basics. I think brand building is where I would kind of put all my money on.
That's very interesting. Let's close the conversation with Tanvi, with whom we started this. What's the key message you would like the audience to take home?
Yeah, I think for me the most important thing when you're starting on a D2C journey, or if you're already well into it, would just be to keep looking towards that goal that you started with. So like I said, as a mass market brand, the goal was always to understand the consumer. For another business which is heavily where D2C is the primary channel, it would obviously be business conversions, etc. So I think just making sure that goal is always your guiding star and ensuring that is what you're chasing. I think that kind of helps drive a lot of your actions towards building a successful sort of a D2C practice. And I think I just think in terms of what how you can kind of build better strategies. I think beg, borrow, steal. I mean, we look a lot to some of the the online first brands. We try to and learn a lot from what they do. We try to learn from brands which are heavily performance oriented, who where leads is the key driver for us. It's even important to understand how those ecosystems function. So I mean, just sort of learn from pretty much everyone around you, steal, borrow, whatever you can, and I think that's
a good note to end this on. I hope the audience found the conversation engaging and something useful to take home with. But yeah, thank you so much all of you for your time, and lovely having you on the panel.